Welcome to the Green Wasp Removal YouTube channel. Today's video is a 90-minute special presentation about bald-faced hornets, a beneficial native species in North America, also known as Dolichovespula Maculata. This special has 3 chapters, linked in the description below, so you can watch the whole show in order now, or you can link to any section that interests you the most. In Chapter 1, you'll ride along with us in the field as we remove an active bald-faced hornet nest from a client's property. In Chapter 2, you'll join us as we analyze the same bald-faced hornet's nest to show you the different developmental stages growing inside the nest, from young larva to pupating adult. In Chapter 3, we'll be relocating the nest into a glass study habitat in our research lab. This will allow you to observe the birth of 22 individual bald-faced hornets in close-up as they emerge from their pupation cells over a 10-day period. We hope you'll enjoy the show. Thanks for being here. We'll start with a 2-minute episode preview to give you an idea of what you're going to get into here. In today's episode, we're going to remove a bald-faced hornet's nest from the eaves of a client's house, and we're going to relocate that nest into captivity for study.
I can smell the venom pheromone, and they keep hitting me, but they can't get me. Well, hello. Hey, buddy. No offense, I understand what you're trying to do. Just defend your house.
We'll be showing you that entire process, from how we collect the nest in the field to how we transport it into the lab. Show you the process of how we have to sacrifice some of the individuals in the nest in order to save the reproductives that are being born in the nest now. And we'll show you the development for these wasps from larva to adult. Then we'll take you right into the research lab with us when we work with this relocated nest. You'll be able to see the amazing process of how these wasps are born inside a bald-faced hornet nest and how they come out of their cells after pupation as fully formed adult wasps. The lab experience is always interesting because it allows you the chance to get right down on the nest like one of the wasps and watch how they operate. It can be fascinating to get this close to the secret world inside the bald-faced hornet nest. As you'll see in the footage, we had about 20 wasps born in captivity in the relocation phase, and then we were able to release them in the wild so that they can go out and mate.
Freedom, guys. Go for it. There you go.
Chapter 1. Removing the nest. So this job began when we got a call on August 19th of 2022. The property owner had actually reached out due to a different species of wasp that they had discovered on the same property, but then we informed them that they also had this native species of Dolichovespula Maculata, which is the bald-faced hornet. It's not a true hornet, it's actually a yellowjacket. It's just black and white instead of black and yellow. But it got the nickname Bald-Faced Hornet years ago, and that seems to have stuck. So we went out on August 22nd of 2022, and the nest was not huge yet, but it was a good time to get it. The property owner was a very eco-conscious person, thankfully, and he allowed us to remove the nest with no toxics, no poisons, and he understood the importance of that. It was an active nest with a lot of foragers, so we decided to get in there and vacuum out those foragers first. We always do this as a safety measure for the technicians doing the job, and also for the property owners or pets or people that may be passing by. It's just important that we don't create a swarm of angry wasps that could attack people. So we control that very carefully by vacuuming up those initial foragers to reduce the adult population in the nest. So these next few clips over the next couple of minutes here will show you what that looked like and sounded like in the field. Once the initial activity settles down and we have contained most of the foragers that were attacking or swarming on the initial approach to the nest, we'll usually put down a bin of some type to catch the paper. Then we'll go up there and we'll try to remove the paper, and we'll let you see what that process looks like here.
So this one was relatively small, not a lot of aggression there from the occupants of this nest. Now we're going to go up and remove most of the paper, so we'll bring you up close to see that. They're letting off their alarm pheromone, trying to spray me with that, hit me with the venom, trying to get their troops rounded up to attack. But there's not enough of them left really to help out this poor guy who's trying to guard the nest. She's doing a good job trying to defend her home. You can't hold it against her. I mean you no harm, my friends. You're a native species. So if you'll allow it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to relocate you. So you just calm down and relax. We'll take good care of you, I promise. This insert keeps the net away from my face. So even though they attack, they cannot reach me. That's what I'm talking about. Protection. My Humble Bee suit. Humble Bee. I stand by that company. They've been good to me. Their gear keeps me safe every time. I can smell the venom pheromone, and they keep hitting me, but they can't get me. So you see, we got some angry little buzzers here. They keep trying to zap my glove. They try to hit my glove and my net, but it's all good. Okay, girls, you settle down. That might be the queen that just popped out to say hi. She took off again. We're definitely going to try to save the queen. You know how that goes. We saved the queen. Reminds me of the Sex Pistols. God save the queen! We really mean it, man. But I do really mean it. We're going to save the queen. If we can. Well, hello. Don't worry, young lady. Not gonna hurt you. I have no paid endorsement for any bee suit at this point, but I recommend Humble Bee. Their gear has been great for me, no problems at all. Now I just pulled down a Polistes nest that was tucked way up in back, so what you can see is the Baldfaced Hornets, they went ahead and built their nest basically on top of an old Polistes nest, probably Polistes dominula, maybe Polistes metricus or fuscatus, but that's what this nest is up in the back. And the Bald-Faced Hornets here, the Maculata, they built their nest right up on top of that one, which is not uncommon because it gives them a nice bit of protection from the ants and the gnats and the predators that would crawl around and the spiders up there. It also makes a nice solid base for them, so it's not unusual to see that. It's like we scared this guy out of the nest. I think we'll collect him. Most of these are going to be beneficial to the environment, so you're probably going to want to take a spider like this and let them live. So the empty comb up in the back, this is all Polistes nest, and then as you see up in here, these discs in the front are all the new nest of the Bald-Faced Hornet, the Maculata. So let's take a look at the larva. These guys are talking to each other, trying to decide how to handle this situation, and they're mightily confused by this whole ordeal. If you can imagine a giant Tyrannosaurus Rex-sized person tearing your house apart to stare at you, that's about what these guys feel like right now. Yeah, they're trying hard to get me, but no offense taken. You notice that every time they attack me, they come right back to the nest. And this is how you eradicate a nest. If you have to kill it off, you just let them attack as long as you're protected. And eventually all of them, by instinct, will circle back to the nest. And then you simply pick up your vacuum tube and collect them there at the nest. So you see a good number of them have hatched out already, but there's still quite a few white caps. The white silk caps you see are the pupating adults. The mature larvae cap off their cells with silk, and when they pupate and become adults, they chew their way out of the silk, and then they join us in the world. So you can see there's a good number of those silk caps. So this nest is going to be very productive had it been left here. So some of the foragers are coming back now. They're taking a look, trying to figure out what's going on. So you see how they continue to attempt to take care of the larvae and maintain the nest despite the fact that their house is being torn apart. These guys are pretty remarkable in their resiliency and their commitment to doing what they need to do to survive. Hey buddy, no offense, I understand what you're trying to do. It's defend your house. I can hear them buzzing around my head. I can't see them, but I can hear them just fine.
So back on voiceover here for a minute. As you watch from this angle, you can see the swarm consistently attempting to sting me. They'll attempt to get through the veil, to the head, to the face, to the eyes. They'll attempt to attack the camera. They'll attack my body. They'll land on my back and my front. The reason we make a point of talking about this is that sometimes these videos, they look easy. We try to make them accessible. We try to explain the process, but you really do need professional gear to do this. If you're ever going to attempt to deal with bald-faced hornets or yellowjackets or really wasps of any type, any stinging insect, you're going to want to make sure you do it right. Do it carefully, do it with the right gear, or just call a professional, because these things don't mess around. They can hurt you. We carry 2 EpiPens in our kit in the field at all times, just in case. So once we have the paper removed, the next step is to collect the nest. And in this case, the nest is only going to be the comb and the brood and the larva and the silk-capped pupating adults that are left. There are times when we collect the entire nest, including the paper, but for this one that's going into the lab for the purpose of looking at the pupating adults as they come out and emerge as adults, we did not need the paper for this nest.
Now it's time to move this nest. We're going to try to get the nest in the bin now. So I'm going to try to collect the nest by scraping it away from the ceiling with this tool and dropping it down into the bin. Now that will probably damage this cell grouping right here, at least, if not others, but we'll do our best to kind of make it happen so that we can save these guys.
There we go.
So if you look up in there, you can see the old Polistes nests. Let's see if we can get those out of here. All right. You ladies had your fun? Okay. amazing how strong those petioles are. That's the little stalks that keep the nest connected to whatever it's connected to. Those stalks are super tough. And they're made with the enzymes of the wasp's saliva and the wood fibers they collect. So here's our nest. It took a little beating to get it out of there, but I think most of it survived. So I'm going to try to let the rest of this nest population come back, like this guy. They're a little confused by the clear bin. But hopefully a few of the foragers will come back here and join the nest, and when they do, I will go ahead and close up the bin and take them with the nest when we relocate it.
So once the bin is closed up and we have the nest secured, whichever foragers come back and hang out where the nest was, which is their instinct, we collect with these jars later on, and then we'll add them to the nest later during the relocation process.
So next thing we do is take a wire brush and scraper, and we just go ahead and scrape the debris from the nest away from the nesting site. It will prevent them from coming back. And we'll spray it down with some bleach water as well. So now that space has been cleared and scraped, so the entire nest is gone. Next thing we typically do is spray it down with a scent that they don't like. You know, bleach water with dish soap solution. You know, sometimes something like Simple Green or essential oils like peppermint oil with a diluted mix of water and dish soap. You spray all that down up in there, and guys like this, the foragers coming back still looking for their house, they'll be discouraged from re-nesting there. For now, let's take a look and see how many we pulled out of here. It wasn't a big nest, so we don't have a lot of material here, and we don't have a lot of wasps. So what we do next, typically at a job site when we're done pulling the wasps and the nest off of the structure, is we'll go ahead and strain out the wasps from the water in the vac, and that'll help us identify them. If there's a question on that, it'll also help us catalog the numbers that we found in the nest, which is important just for documentation locally. So let's take a look. What you see here is what we pulled out of the nest, the foragers. There's a few foragers we also saved and left with the nest so we can relocate it. What we don't know is if the queen was captured in this initial vacuuming or not. Hopefully not. Hopefully she's still with the nest or in one of the forager containers that we have. But we'll see. So let's strain this out. That's all of the wasps. Wasps and some paper. So we'll probably try to save the paper as well and dry it out. paper. Okay. So, at the end of the day, you've got some foragers in this container, which you see in here now. These guys were captured after the nest was vacuumed up. We'll reintroduce them to the nest. Here's the guys that did not survive because they came out to attack as soon as we started the job. We have to collect those foragers. In the bin here is the nest and a few of the other guys who survived, who stayed with the nest. So once we strain them out, they're all strained out and contained now. We put the water back in so we don't waste water, and we use it for the next job.
Chapter 2. Examining the nest.
So here we have the bald-faced hornet's nest, Dolichovespula Maculata. As you can see, there's still activity in the nest, and there's still some workers inside. So we're going to open that up today, retrieve the paper, which we collect because it's beautiful, and we'll see if we can't relocate this nest if it's still surviving. How you doing, partner? You still alive in there? I know you're a little dehydrated probably. So these guys have been in the bin since yesterday, so they're probably dehydrated and too hot, which probably killed some of them, but it's the best we could do for timing. Yesterday was so busy. So we're going to try to retrieve the paper here, first of all, and then try to relocate these guys. Unfortunately, some of them didn't make it, but there's still a bunch who did. A few workers left in there. Not sure if we got the queen in this container here or not. She might have been vacuumed up when we first worked with this nest. Beautiful paper. So I'm not sure who's the queen here. She'll normally look quite a bit bigger than the workers. So we'll have to wait and see if we can locate her. These don't quite look like her. As you can see, one of the newly emerged adults is on the nest. This one was probably born here in the bin overnight. Same with this one. You can tell by the behavior. It's hanging out, not moving much. Doesn't seem to understand what to do out here in the world because it's been in the bin the whole time that it's come out of pupation. So while that newly hatched adult just sort of sleeps here, we're going to take a peek at one of her sibling cells and see what's in there. Here you can see a pupating larva. And this larva obviously is still in the midst of development. You can see the antennas have been formed, and the legs and the eyes are visible, and the shape of an adult wasp is forming. But it was not ready to come out yet, obviously. But it's not going to be long until it was. Now if we try another one, they're usually in various different stages of development. Here you see one that's a little bit more of a larva still. You see some of the mandibles have been formed. There's also very immature larvae still in the nest. We'll just leave those where they are. I'll show you one, I guess. So smaller larvae, not yet developed beyond kind of a grub stage. I'm going to put these down here so you can see the different stages of development. This material is remarkably strong, the silk. Here's a camper who came back to the nest, trying to figure out what's happening here. It's actually difficult to tear. The silk is so strong. Now here you have a more formed pupating wasp, starting to take the colors of its adult form, but not quite there yet. You can see most of the body parts it'll have as an adult have been formed. There's a similar developmental stage where most of the adult parts are visible. Antenna, legs, body. So the rest of these we're going to let them develop. But for your reference, so here you have the life stages inside the nest of the Baldfaced Hornet. That's the Dolichovespula Maculata. What we don't have here is an egg. What you see here on the right, to begin with, is the first really larval stage. It's a sort of a mid-growth larval stage, and it's still in the grub form, really. Then you have a slightly larger larva. Then you have one of the early adult pupations where the wasp begins to take on the form of a wasp, a more identifiable form that it will have as an adult wasp. Then when they become a little bit older, they start to take on the coloration that they'll have when they're adults. And that's where these guys are in this stage. You can very clearly see the beginnings of their legs and antennae and what will be their wings. Then when they're fully grown, of course they look like this. When they're finally born, they're like this guy here. They're connected to the nest, they're functional and able to move, but they don't fly yet. But she'll be flying pretty soon. So those are the stages you'll see in a wasp nest. We're going to see if we can let the rest of these survive. Try to relocate that nest and see what happens. So this little girl is the only one currently out of pupation. There's quite a number left in here to chew their way out of the silk cap when they're done with the pupation stage. I prefer to see these get a chance at least to hatch out, like this one has. And she's not able to fly yet, so she's just hanging out. Don't worry, sweetheart, we're going to take care of you. So we'll come back and deal with that in a little bit. See anybody up there? I'm guessing you probably do. I seem to have a little friend. This one that's on my hat was born in the bin last night after we had collected it from the client's house and brought it into captivity. And I saw it crawling up my arm as I was filming some of the nest dissection video. And I figured she was probably up on top of my hat. So I guess I have an adoptee. Maybe I'll have to give her a name, let her hang out. So as you see, we have a couple that are campers on the nest here, and they're the ones that were born here over the last 24 hours since we've had the nest sitting in the bin. All they know is this bin, because when they came out into the world, this was the world. So they're pretty mellow. The three amigos just chilling out. They're more interested really in hiding at this point. Except this one who went for a walk on my hat earlier. Walked all the way up my arm, ended up on my hat. So I just picked her up and put her on my finger. Let her walk right around. Brought her back to the nest. Not exactly the killers that they have a reputation of being, you know. Baldfaced Hornet, everybody shudders in their shoes and thinks they're going to get attacked immediately. Well, it's just not true. If you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. Obviously, if you disturb their nest, then there will be some issues with that. But in general, they're just not going to bother you.
Chapter 3. Relocating the nest into the lab for study, documenting the pupation process, and the release of the pupated adult wasps back into the wild.
So we've had a study habitat in the lab filled with local Metricus wasps. So we were studying their habits. But basically they've lived in here since October of 2021, and it's now late August of 2022, and we're going to let them go. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the Baldfaced Hornet nest right here that still has some adults on it that are pupating out. We're going to put that in the habitat, and we're going to see if we can observe the Baldfaced Hornets go through the pupation stage while they chew their way out. We'll see. Come on. Come on. There you go. These guys have been good friends in the lab. There you go, dude. Freedom. Come on, guys. Let's go. Let's go. Come on. It's all good. Come on out. Come on. Let's go. There you go. Let's go, buddy. Come on. There. All right. Hey, dude, I hate to interrupt your meal, but it's time to go. Let's go. Come on. Gotta get rid of all this stuff. Yeah, hey, buddy, come on out. There you go. This guy might be an annularis, actually. But anyway, come here, dude. Let's get you out of there. Come on. All right. Say hello to the world again, buddy.
So we sterilized the habitat, got it all cleaned up and ready for the next tenant, and then we moved in the bald-faced hornet nest that we needed to relocate for study. At this point, all of the other foragers had left the nest prior to coming into the habitat, except for one male and one female.
And already we have some of the pupating adults ready to chew their way out of their silk cap. So here you get to witness the birth of a bald-faced hornet. Note how she chews and chews to get out of that cell. The silk cap is very tough. It provides them with a very good home in which they can pupate from the larval stage to the adult wasp stage.
So what you saw there was the first one born of about another 18 or so that were born in this particular habitat over the next 10 days. We filmed a lot of them, and we'll show you them here in a montage in a moment. But what was interesting was there was only one or two females born. This is one of them that you just saw come out now. It was a male that came over to greet her as she was coming out. He was already there on the nest. He'd been born in the bin while we were relocating the nest. But as for the ones born actually in this habitat that we set up, she was the first and one of the only one or two females. All of the others that were born over the next 9 days were males.
So this is honey. And we're going to feed them now. They are very hungry.
So as you can see, the adult wasps took to the honey feedings pretty well, and that remained the case over the next 9 days as many more were born. They all ate honey primarily. In the first couple of days, some of them would eat the fluids from the larva because the larvae actually produce fluids routinely that are kind of a sweet carbohydrate liquid that the adults routinely drink through trophallaxis, which is mouth-to-mouth feeding. So here on the first night in captivity, you see this wasp soliciting some of that fluid from this larva, and the larva gives it mouth-to-mouth. Here the newborn who just came out of the cell is searching for sustenance and fluids from the larva. The larvae produce a fluid that the adult wasps can drink. And usually the arrangement is the adult wasps will forage for insect protein, bring that back to the larva, and the larva will then produce a sweet fluid that the adult can drink. So it's a two-way feeding process. So here you see her soliciting that fluid from the larva. Since we knew the larva probably would not survive in the habitat, and we were primarily interested in the pupating wasps underneath the silk caps coming out, we knew it would be important to make sure that all of them could figure out how to eat honey. So we did a lot of offering of honey, as you see here. There you go. That's it, sweetheart. That's a good thing to do. You eat up. As you see here on the first night, they caught on right away with the honey. It was no problem, and all of them were eating pretty readily. Initially, we wanted them to understand where the honey dish was, so we didn't have to feed them with the honey stick by hand all the time. So you're going to see here the process of leading them toward the honey dish until they understand how to drink from that. By instinct, they're hesitant to leave the nest as newborns, so they kind of hang on with the claws on their feet and stretch as far as they can to keep one foot on the nest, but ultimately they follow the food. Once they separate from the nest and hold on to the honey stick, we just give them a little ride down to the honey dish, and that's where they discover that there's a whole lot more food there. Later on, we just slid the dish over to the nest so they could just walk down the nest and hang on to the nest and the dish at the same time, and that made them all less hesitant to go for the dish. They just want the security of having the nest nearby. So that first night, they all just slept and ate and slept and ate. It was a pretty relaxed evening for everybody. Over time, they started to gain enough energy and confidence to begin exploring the environment. So you see here, they started climbing the glass and really sort of checking out their new world here. It's always enjoyable to watch how their little minds work as they take in every inch of the whole environment, and they really do go through every single nook and cranny of their entire habitat to try to figure it out. The males are not necessarily so interested in leaving the nest that quickly, but all the females are super curious by nature, and they sort of take charge by instinct. It didn't take long that same night for the next one to start chewing its way out, so we knew this was going to be a pretty good arrangement for this nest. They seem to have no trouble adapting at all to this very strange orientation of their nest. It's upside down compared to how it is in nature. We basically have it laying on its back. Generally, the openings of these cells should point toward the ground and should be entirely covered with paper, so it's dark inside and quiet and humid inside. But here in the open habitat, for study purposes in the lab, it was flipped upside down. The cells faced up toward the ceiling. Everything was weird, but They adapted just fine, and they started popping out like popcorn over the next 9 days with no trouble. But here on the first night, August 23rd, we had one female born first, and then this guy popped out. Her brother. It's a male. You can tell by the extra long antenna, and he has 4 white sections on his tail, and he also has a white line across his back on the upper abdomen. That's how you can tell the difference. Females don't have that upper white line typically, and they only have 3 sections of their tail abdomen that are white, and he has 4. The 4th is the very tip of the abdomen where you see almost 2 little teeth-like structures. So this guy was the first of many brothers born in this habitat over the next few days. And you have to remember, as they come out of the cells, they're upside down compared to what they would be in nature, so they're having to climb up toward the ceiling to get out of their cell, which is probably more difficult than climbing down with gravity on your side. They normally are head down toward the ground when they get out of the cell in nature, but here in the habitat you had to climb up, straight up and out, which is a little tougher. But it's interesting to watch their behavior when they come out, as they walk around the nest and they learn how to walk on their legs and they fan their wings out for the first time. It's always fun to watch. And right away they start exploring the whole nest, probably seeking out larvae so that they can have a drink of fluids. By instinct, they know that's what they're supposed to do, and they figure that out. Here in the habitat, only the first few days had larvae in the nest. After that, we had to tweeze them out because they started to die, and we didn't want that to foul the nest, you know. So the ones that were born later in that 9-10 day period were born into a nest with no larvae at all, and all there was honey to drink. But these first few that were born, they still had the option to solicit fluids from larvae by sticking their heads into cells and basically having mouth-to-mouth fluid exchange with the larvae, which is their natural form of food. Over the next few minutes here, we'll show you a montage of many of the births that happened in similar ways as the pupating adults chewed out of their silk caps and joined the nest as adult wasps. August 24th, 2022. This is the Maculata nest that was relocated into captivity. There's 4 adults on the nest that were born in captivity. There's 2 males, there's 2 females. They're taking well enough to captivity, learning how to drink out of the honey dish. So what we're trying to do is allow all of these pupating silk caps to chew their way out as adults before we dispose of the nest. That's why it's in captivity here. We've already filmed a couple of them coming out. That was 2 of these that you see here. We were able to capture that on film while they were born, so to speak, and chewed their way out of their silk cap. But in the meantime, we're waiting on the others. So here on the 24th of August, you can see we didn't have to wait long. Another one started chewing his way out that night. They each act a little differently as they come out, and you can see this one, as it comes out of the cell, it reaches and extends its tongue, extends its antennas, starts trying to groom its antennas with its forelegs. It's just taking in a lot of sensory input from the environment. That's what all this activity is. They learn how to groom themselves shortly before they come out of the cell. But when they break through the cell, this is the first time they've actually had a lot of space around them to work with. And their other legs keep pushing and pushing and trying to break through the last of the silk on the top of the silk cap. And as you see the 4 white segments at the end of the abdomen, that tells you this is a male. And you can see the extra long antenna. and there were many, many males born over the next several days. You can see the wasp on the right that he's interacting with a little bit is a female, because it's 3 segments of white on her abdomen and not 4. So here on the 25th of August, the next one started coming out, and we noticed as the days went by, the females on the nest would check in more with the new ones being born. So this one came out, he was a male also. And you can see in the background that the females tended to be out and about on the nest more often, sort of taking care of business, while the males would keep their heads in the cells a lot of the time, which seems to be instinctual behavior for the males when there's dominant females around. This male that had just been born was able to walk directly to the honey dish. Somehow he found it immediately and came over and got a drink with one of the females. And he's still learning how to navigate his legs, so he got honey all over one of his legs and he had to clean that off a little bit. But it was almost as if the females on the nest were beginning to act a little queen-like and sort of direct things on the nest, and that may have been part of how he was able to immediately go to the honey dish. So this male is the 7th one born in captivity since we relocated the nest. You may notice as you look at the nest, there's no more larvae in the nest. It was on this date, August 25th, that we had to remove all of the larvae so that they did not decompose inside the nest, because most of them were starting to die, as we had expected. We had tried to add some protein to the nest feeding dishes, just in case any of the females might decide to start feeding the larvae some protein, but they never did engage that protein. You can see a little bit of it there on the right in the bottle cap dish. That was some shredded meat we left, but they ignored it. On August 25th, we started to see the females begin their orientation flights as well, which is also instinctual behavior for them. They're out exploring their environment, and they started to take flights around the habitat and figure out what the borders were and learn how to navigate that space pretty well. So you see, as the males are kind of head stuffed in their cells, the females are out taking flight and learning the environment, getting familiar with the airspace. If they were out in their natural habitat inside a nest in the wild, this is exactly what would be happening. The females would be out foraging, flying, exploring the world, taking care of business, and the males would be essentially staying on the nest, just eating whatever resources were brought to them. In regular speed, these flights are very brief and very fast. They're incredibly quick as they get around. It almost looks like chaotic bouncing around inside the glass habitat. But when you slow it down, it's very graceful flight, very purposeful, and you can simply see that they know what they're doing. Even if when we look at it, it looks a little chaotic. That's just because we're slow humans. In the high speed, multiple eye physicality that they have, they can see exactly what they're doing, and they're very intentional in their movements. Wasps actually have 5 eyes. They have 2 large compound eyes that we all see pretty easily, but they also have 3 very small, simple eyes, and these 5 eyes work in tandem to give them excellent vision and orientation skills. So next time you see a yellowjacket or a bald-faced hornet in flight, and they're just zipping along in zigzag flights, you'll know how they can be so fast. As we went into August 26th, you see here number 8 is about to chew his way out of the cell, and the cell is surrounded by his siblings. It's getting to be a busy place now that there's going to be 8 here on the nest surface. And it's interesting to watch how much interaction they have between the brand new wasp and those that are already on the nest. Right away he's touching several of them, and they're touching him. They're walking over him and talking to him, and he's trying to figure out who's a front end and who's a back end. And on the same day, as you can see here, the next one, number 9, started chewing his way out. Here he is coming out and extending his antenna and his tongue and trying to take in all the sensory input that he can. Many of them over the coming days would come out part of the way like this and then go back down into their cells and chew away more of the silk, and then they'd come out part of the way again and feel it out, and whenever it felt right, they'd come out. For a while he was under the watchful eye of one of the females on the nest. As he was coming out, he seemed a little hesitant. She came back over and gave him a little encouragement, and they started to engage in trophallaxis, which is the mouth-to-mouth feeding. You see her here producing some fluids for him, and he immediately starts to drink that. And this sort of feeding and communicating went on very, very often as some of these were being born. It didn't happen every time. Many wasps came out, they were kind of on their own, but every now and then you'd see this kind of behavior where they'd come out and someone would greet them and immediately they would have contact. So this guy spent a couple minutes cleaning himself up and grooming and getting acclimated as his lower legs started to really push and get him out of that last push out of the cell. And remember, this is unusual for them to have to push themselves up against gravity to get out of a cell. Normally they're exactly the opposite. Normally the gravity is helping them because their cell faces the ground. The opening faces the ground. And here in the habitat, here in the lab, we have to have it facing up so we can see them and observe them, so they have to climb out against gravity, and that's a little tougher for them. But he did a good job here. Once he got cleaned up, he popped himself right out. August 26th was a busy day here because after number 8 and number 9 came out on the same night, number 10 popped out here. Here you see him already getting on his way out of the cell. His cell's located way over on the edge of the nest, as you can see here in the wider shot. So he was one of the ones that was more on his own when he came out, but he seemed to do just fine. The next day on August 27th, number 11 started chewing his way out. This guy came out in the wee hours of the morning, so we missed him actually exiting the cell. But this is him getting started. Later that same day, we had 3 coming out of the nest simultaneously, all 3 chewing through their silk caps at once. Here you see one of them. And then over across the nest, you see a little antenna poking out there at the edge of the nest. That's the second one of the 3. And then over here, you see the third one on its way out of that silk cap at center frame. 2 of them actually made it out on this calendar day of August 27th. Here's one of them right here. We'll call him number 12. He's got a little debris stuck on his antennas, but otherwise he did okay. Here you see him trying to get that off. He doesn't have much luck right now, but I think later on he finally did. Meanwhile, on the other side, you see number 13 climbing up out of his cell. You can see as he comes out how much physical labor it takes to get out of these cells. They have to really chew and chew and chew for a very long time to help dissolve that silk and allow it to be torn away from the cell. Once they get through that process, they have to really work hard, get all their legs moving and their body going to get the rest of the way out of the cell. And once they get out, they're pretty exhausted, but they can still move around pretty well. You see how good it must feel to be able to just stretch and groom and spread your wings and have a little breathing space. So on August 28th, the next one came out. That'll be number 14. As you can see, he was covered in a little bit of the pupation material still. You can see him here kind of on his own on this wider shot. We did not catch him coming out of the cell. We only caught this part of it, but he was born on the 28th, so we'll call him number 14. Then on August 29th, we had 2 more males born. We'll call those number 15 and number 16. This is number 15 right here coming out. He had kind of a perfect position because he could grab the cells above him on the next section of cells and pull himself right out. But he was only out for a minute, and then he turned around and went right back head first into his cell. You see them climb right back in. And the behavior is so unique. They come out and then they immediately pop their head right back in and stay there. If you look over to a cell to the left of that one that he's in, you'll see another one starting to chew its way out of its own cell. So we'll call him number 16. This one got a little bit stuck as he was coming out. He spent about 15 minutes here really struggling trying to get out of the cell. I don't think he had cut around the silk cap enough, so he got stuck. He struggled for quite a while. Got one of his lower legs out, but most of them were stuck because his abdomen was just too wide to get out of the hole. At one point, another wasp even walked by and kind of checked him out and thought, "Man, you do look stuck, buddy." Didn't seem to be much that wasp could do for him, but it did take note of his plight. Eventually, it just kind of looked like he wasn't going to get out of there, so we decided to intervene, give him a little hand. We got one of the honey feeding sticks out, and we just put it over next to him, and he knew just what to do. He grabbed right onto it, and in a very short time, he was out. He looked pretty happy to be free. He was buzzing his wings and stretching. It was nice to be able to help one out. By August 30th, the place was getting pretty busy. There was a lot of communication going on, a lot of trophallaxis. A lot of the wasps were out walking around, especially the two females, but then more of the males started getting out and getting around too, soliciting fluids from the females and moving around the cage a little bit more. But still, most of them just stayed head down in the cells with their abdomen sticking out the open end of the cell. In the midst of all this chaos, number 17 started poking his head out, getting ready to remove himself from the cell. That's the next one you'll see being born here. He didn't have much trouble getting out. He was able to pull himself up without any issues. It's always amusing to look across the nest and see nothing but a bunch of wasp butts sticking up in the air. It's such unique behavior that the males do. That same day, number 18 started working his way out. He was another one on the very edge of the nest, kind of on his own. But we noticed as he started coming out, he got hung up and he stayed there for quite a while. But he finally got a second wind there and started pulling himself out. But we noticed right away as he pulled himself out, he was struggling to pull the last part of his abdomen out. And we realized as he came out, this was the first one we'd seen with a pretty serious birth defect. As you'll see here in a minute, he had malformed wings that still had some of the pupation material stuck to them, and that caused the wings to hook in an odd direction and made it difficult for him to get out. But he was pretty strong and he made it out okay. He seemed to be perfectly formed otherwise, but we knew we'd have to do a little surgical intervention on this guy to help him out. His wing problem didn't really seem to slow him down at all. He went right over to the others and jumped into the dog pile there, and he was perfectly able to socialize and get along okay otherwise. So eventually we pulled him out of the group and we brought him over into the hospital ward, and we gave him a little honey to calm him down, give him some food, and we prepared to surgically assist his wing problem. Most of the pupation material separated pretty easily, but the wings were severely malformed and they bent in the wrong direction and would never open, obviously, because they were kind of fused shut. And he had some string material that was also part of the old pupation debris, so we just removed that to give him some freedom of motion. He tolerated that pretty well because the honey kept him occupied, which was helpful. Eventually we got him all cleaned up and all the extra pupation debris had been removed. Then it was time to trim the malformed wings so he wouldn't keep getting hung up on things. It took a little wrangling, but we eventually got the job done. Once we got both sides trimmed, we just set him right back down on the nest, and he jumped right back in and joined the others, and had no trouble from that point. You see him here climbing back into one of the cells like the other guys, and he did fine from that point. Ate normally, moved normally. The only thing he couldn't do was fly, so we knew we'd have to keep him in one of our habitats for the rest of his life, because without wings, that's a death sentence out in the wild for a wasp. So we'll keep him here with us. Try to give him a good life, let him eat honey every day, and have a comfortable habitat. So as August 31st rolled around, you could see it was starting to get a little busy on the nest. We had 18 wasps born in captivity. We had 2 females and 16 males so far. So we figured we'd schedule a release. One of the females actually escaped the habitat during a food change, and so we had only 1 female left at that point, so technically 17 wasps. Today's the day we're going to let our bald-faced hornets go, at least those that are ready to leave the nest. We opened up the habitat for them, and they can fly free now. So let's see how many want to leave the nest. August 31st, 2022. This is the relocated Maculata nest, the bald-faced hornets. They've done well in captivity. This is their first time coming outside the lab since they were all born on this nest in captivity inside the habitat here. It's becoming busy enough in there that it's time to release the males that have been born in there, and there's 1 female left in there. So as you can see, the first time they've been outside, the natural light made them immediately take notice and get ready to fly. So we're going to let these guys out today. We're going to go ahead and let them go and mate here at the end of summer season going into fall, and that's what they're supposed to do to propagate their species. It's interesting, in the lab, most of the males engaged in this behavior where they would just stay inside their cells, head first in the cell with their abdomen sticking out of the open area of the cell. But as soon as we brought them outside here, right away the males began flying around the cage, and that's a good sign that they're healthy and ready to go mate. So we're going to release them today and let them go do their thing in nature. Alright, you guys sound like you're ready for action. Here we go. Freedom, guys. Go for it. There you go. All right, on the initial round of flight, about half of them left. The others are still here, not quite aware that they can be free now. So we'll let them slowly come around. The only one we're going to keep in the habitat, and we'll clean it up for him and make it nice for him, is the one male who was born with deformed wings. All right, guys, you ready to come out? Hey, you're free. Come on out. Come on out, it's okay. There you go. Wake up. Fresh air out there. There, you got it. Nice. Okay. Let's see who's left. Still got a few campers in there. Oops, I'm writing a drink. Okay, buddy, off you go. So we've still got a few that are camping out in the nest. Not quite ready to meet the world yet. Okay, dude, time to go. you go. Freedom. Okay, buddy. You're free. You can take off anytime you want. There he goes. Come on, buddy. Freedom. It's only a flight away. They're not quite ready to use their wings yet, maybe. There you go. So we have 4 left in the nest. One has birth defects from the wings, so we have to keep him so he'll be safe. But the other 3 are just not ready to leave yet, so we'll let them stay for a while. So we're back in the lab and we want to take a closer look at the few bald-faced hornet males that did not want to leave yet. We have at least 3 of them. There might be 1 or 2 more, but we're going to take a look and see what's going on with these guys. And then this 4th, we'll try to pull that one out because I believe that one is dead. And down in here I see the legs of another. I'm not sure what the status is there. That might have just been cannibalized by the others. I don't know. So we'll take a look. Yeah, looks like this guy didn't make it. So we'll take a closer look at him. Try to figure out what happened there. So we had 3 males that reached pupation and adult form, but for some reason just didn't survive. They either came out of their cell and then went directly in headfirst to another cell and never came out, or they never finished chewing their way out of a cell and they died inside the cell during that process. So those 3 unfortunately didn't survive. But in the nest we still have our friend with the trimmed wings and another one that has a wing problem as well. So here we have one little buddy who's got a damaged wing. The wing on the left, so we can turn him here. The wing on the left side, as you can see, is a little short. So we're going to take him outside for a flight test. If he can fly with a damaged wing, we're going to let him go. Okay, partner, here's your shot. You want to try flying? There you go. Yeah. Try working those wings, see what you can do. There you go. Go ahead. It's a beautiful day for a flight. Try it out, see what you can do. So he eventually took a flight and he did fine, so we let him go. Meanwhile, back in the lab, we had another birth happening. So this would be number 19. Once he came out of the cell, we took him outside. This is a bald-faced hornet male. He did not come from this nest, but this nest appears to be defunct lately. So what we'll do is we'll drop him off here so he's got somewhere to hang out while his wings dry and he figures out that he's here to mate. And that's why he's in this world. So on September 1st, we had another birth inside the habitat in the lab. We didn't get to film this one, but it was an active, healthy male. This would be number 20 born in captivity. So we gave him a little snack of honey, and then we got him set up and ready to go outside. We dropped him at the same nest that we put the other one on the other day. So hopefully he'll have a good place there to prepare to get himself ready to mate. Then on September 3rd, we had another birth in the lab. This one was able to chew his way out with no problem. It was a good active male. He was number 21, and he came out very healthy and seemed perfectly capable and active, so we released him as well. Overall, this nest was very productive, and we're glad we were able to relocate it from the client's house so that all of these wasps could come out of their pupation stage and hopefully go out and mate, which is their job in nature. Typically the male drone's only job is to mate, and then they die at the end of the season, while the newly impregnated queens will go out and hibernate and overwinter somewhere and then start brand new colonies in the spring. So these males have an important job to do, and we were glad to get 19 of them out of this nest, as well as 2 females who hopefully will be queens. With any luck, some of them will survive to carry on their species into the upcoming year. Meanwhile, as we finished up editing on this video on September 4th of 2022, we saw another one begin the process of chewing his way out of the silk cap inside the habitat. So it looks like 22 wasps total from this one so far. Unfortunately for number 22, when he came out of the cell, we noticed he had a pretty severe birth defect. His wings had never formed inside the pupation cell, so they were malformed. That meant if we did release him into the wild, he would die. He cannot live out there as a wasp without wings. So we're just going to adopt him. We'll let him stay here in one of our habitats. He'll have his own pad, and he'll have honey every day. And he'll have good friends around here because we've got multiple species of wasps that we keep in the habitats for research purposes. So we'll be happy to have him. But we are going to need a name for this little guy. So if you happen to come up with a name for him, please leave it in the comments, and we'll choose a name from the comments. So he came out covered in a lot of extra pupation material, so we knew we'd have to put him in the hospital ward a little bit here, just to clean him up, scrape the extra pupation material away from his body, and allow him to be clean and comfortable. First thing we had to do was give him a little honey, give him some energy. He was definitely hungry and ready to eat. He figured out the honey stick right away, and he seemed to have real good energy otherwise. Besides his deformities, he seemed to have the ability to get around okay and to use his legs okay. So he seemed like he'd have a pretty viable shot at a good life. So once we got him cleaned up, we introduced him to the honey dish, and he was a very big fan of the honey dish. He would hang on the nest and the honey dish and stay there for quite a while drinking. Once we had him sugared up, he started taking off and exploring the nest. A good climber and a pretty fast mover. Right now he's king of the hill because there are no other wasps in the habitat with him, only silk caps, which may or may not hatch out here. Here he took a little walk on the glass after he fell in the honey dish by accident and got himself all covered in honey. So he had to clean himself up pretty good, but he did a good job, and now he's back to normal. But he made a pretty good mess of the glass, so we're going to have to clean that up for him. So let us know if you come up with a name for this guy. Just leave it in the comments, and we'll let everybody know what name he ends up with. That's it for today's video. We hope you enjoyed the 90-minute special. Thanks for being here. Have a good one.